All right, we've got to talk about this absolutely absurd CNN headline because it's a perfect microcosm of the mainstream media's failure to cover Donald Trump responsibly. Donald Trump has been threatening other territories, threatening to essentially invade them. And CNN decides to put out a headline that says the president elect has suggested a territorial extension into Panama, Greenland, and Canada. If he's serious, it would rival the Louisiana Purchase. This dude is making threats towards other countries. And rather than calling that out, CNN calls it a territorial expansion, like it's some sort of manifest destiny nonsense, or it's some sort of great, great play from him. It's not. It's a dangerous, undiplomatic way of functioning. It's the opposite of diplomacy. I want to bring in Arya, one of our Gen Z contributors. Brilliant voice. Her channel's in the description below. What do you think about this in the mainstream media just failing to cover Trump?
I remember during Hurricane Helene, Donald Trump was going on and on about how the Biden administration was like not giving money to North Carolina because they're funneling money to illegal immigrants. And then CNN was like, Trump gives a speech of unity. We've been seeing the sanewashing of Donald Trump for a while. And up until now, it hasn't really had that much of an impact because he hasn't had a powerful position. Like him using the whole 1.4% popular vote that he won as a mandate to do whatever he wants. We can't give him any more reasons to do whatever he wants. So the fact that mainstream media is even entertaining this as a thing that could happen in the free world, like this is a known. Do you think that no other country would step in if the US just fucking sent troops up to Canada and started invading? Like, that's not a thing that we could do. That's just not. It would be literally us against the world if we were to do that. It's so poorly thought out. It's like insane that CNN is even entertaining this idiocy. Like, why are we not?
Not only that, but the sitting US president elect is openly entertaining the idea of annexing a sovereign country right next to us, our next door neighbors. I mean, his son is posting memes showing that they have Canada and Mexico and the Panama Canal in their shopping cart or whatever. So not only do we have the president elect acting like an autocrat openly, but now our media is running defense for him because they're scared of being sued like ABC or being sued like Ann Seltzer. And I get it. I get that the threat is scary, but you need to be calling out this autocratic behavior because if we take a step back, everything Donald Trump does emboldens autocrats across the globe. When he says that our elections are rigged, then other countries go, oh, look, even the USA's elections are rigged. Like we can rig our elections too. When he says, oh, I might annex this territory, then Putin's just going to be like, oh, look at the US annexes territories too. Like, what am I doing wrong? Every single time that Donald Trump emboldens this type of autocratic rhetoric, it's dangerous on the global stage. And we see that in Hungary and other countries. And just to bring it back, the fact that CNN can't properly call it out is insane. Like you had a really good example of the unity piece. I remember when Trump gave that interview with Kristen Welker, and he said a ton of insane things about immigration, like he wanted to end birthright citizenship. The CNN headline that I got on my phone literally said, Trump looking to reach across the aisle. It's absolutely insane, like you said. So how do you think that we can step up to the plate in digital media? Because we're about to build something really cool over the next few years. How do you think that we can take the mantle and make sure that CNN stops both sidesing everything?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. If I'm being honest, there's only so much that we can do. So it's not like we're trying to say like, oh, we have the most unbiased, the cleanest source of information. Like no one's saying that. It's always like do your own research. We're encouraging like everyone to go watch the clips for themselves, look at the documents for themselves, right? CNN doesn't do that, and it presents it in like a very factual way. It doesn't establish that trust with the audience. It's just saying this happened, this, and this. And that's an issue because that's not how it happened. That's not the full scope of the facts. And by them portraying it in only that way, it gives then Fox an excuse to only portray specific facts in their way. And then it's just going back and forth when the audience isn't being encouraged to do their own critical thinking. They're just reading what's in front of them and running with it.
Yeah, and it feels like CNN, the reason why they're not trustworthy is because they can't hold any sort of panel or any sort of discussion without both sidesing the issues. So, I mean, this is a perfect example. This headline is the perfect example of both sidesing something. I mean, they're not even both sidesing it. They're just giving Donald Trump's side. They're sanewashing what he's saying. And they're like, oh, it's just simple territorial extension that would rival the Louisiana Purchase, as if it's a normal idea that he's throwing out. So yeah, that's a good point. CNN can't do anything without both sidesing it. And again, just from a broad point of view, the no new wars dude, the dude who campaigned on having no new wars repeatedly over and over, is now planning multiple wars before he's even taking office. And I get that he's probably not going to actually round up the troops and go invade Canada, but he doesn't have to. The rhetoric that he's using is destabilizing on the global stage, and we don't have the media in place to check him when he's doing that. We need platforms like ours, independent platforms, where, yeah, of course, we're not completely unbiased, absolutely, but at least we provide the source documents. We show people how to do the research. And if I'm having a MAGA supporter on my show, which I've done it many times at the Trump rallies, I'm relentlessly pushing back. I am hammering them down on election fraud, on this lie. What about what Bill Barr said about this? And then you have like Scott Jennings on CNN who gets to basically run the entire show. I mean, Scott Jennings gets to control the narrative. And then the Democrats on that panel have to be pushing back on Scott Jennings. So it's not the first time they've dropped the ball, and it definitely won't be the last time. How do you think the Democratic Party, especially specifically young people like us, how do we push back against Trump's autocratic type of ruling when people our age think it's strength? I have friends who just think he's like strong and he's a troll. He likes to troll the libs. How do we show that this is destabilizing?
So I'm like kind of constantly surrounded by MAGA. Like my whole family is MAGA. Basically everyone that I work with is MAGA. Like there's a lot, and I found that a really effective way to get them to see like just the logical fallacy that Donald Trump uses is just asking why repeatedly until you get to the source of the logic. So it's like Donald Trump wants to invade Canada, Mexico, Greenland, and Panama. Why? Because he thinks that we're subsidizing him. Why does he think that we're subsidizing them? That's a trade deficit. That's not what a subsidy is, like at all. He doesn't know what a subsidy is. But that logic tracks. And that's what they're buying into. It sounds good of, oh, the US is paying for all of these things of these countries. Why the fuck shouldn't the US own these countries? Like, come on, that's like the most, like, obviously I don't want my taxpayer dollars going towards these countries that we don't have any control over. Then you go to that logic, okay, so let's make DC a state. So let's make Puerto Rico a state. Like if we're gonna use the logic of subsidizing things, of anything that we need, if we're going to use the logic of anything that we subsidize needs to become a state, let's apply the logic to the actual continental US first. Like, how does that? And then it just points out how absolutely ridiculous, like, oh, wait, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Like, I have a friend that lives in DC. Like, you're right. We should make DC. Then it doesn't make any sense to go onto all of these extremes. And it points out just exactly how extreme Donald Trump is. Like, no one's mind would first jump to Greenland. No one would go to that first. It's like the most dramatic thing.
Yeah, I like the Socratic method, was what you're saying, like Socratic questioning, where you just keep asking really simple questions, like, why is that? Why would he say that? And then usually with the Socratic method, you can get to like the very fundamental views that they have. And once you know their fundamental views, you can pick it apart and build back up their worldview. It's a really interesting way of talking to people. But yeah, I mean, just to back up, it's just scary seeing CNN not call this out like they need to when he's genuinely acting as an autocrat. I said this earlier, but when Donald Trump says that democracy is a sham, even the US president says their elections are rigged, the US is even annexing their neighbors, it creates this permission structure, which we always talk about, for other countries to then act up. I mean, Viktor Orban in Hungary is going to look at Trump and be like, oh, look, he's doing this. I can do whatever I want. So, I mean, Trump defenders will say, no new wars, president. He can say whatever he wants. CNN will have to both sides it, but we'll be relentlessly pushing back. Thank you for joining me, Arya. Arya's channel is in the description below. Brilliant Gen Z voice. Make sure you go subscribe. Love you guys, and peace out.